When will the realization of the self will be gained? That's the question. When the world, which is what is seen, has been removed, there will be realization of the self, which is the seer. When will the realization of the self be gained? When the world, which is what is seen, has been removed. So here he breaks it. The world is actually perceived by the mind, yes? And when the mind is removed, there is no world. And the mind is removed by absence of thoughts. It's not like we have to take a tractor, shovels and stuff to remove the world. Just an absence of thought and there is no world. Yes? That's why he says the mind reverts to silence spontaneously after every thought. That means a thought appears, complete itself and disappears. Another thought appears, complete itself and disappears. There is never ever a thought that appears and stays permanent.
So it's more efficient to stop the mind than try to attempt to stop the thoughts.
Mind and thought is the same.
Okay. Information coming in. Then I have to know the difference between information coming in.
Every impression is a thought.
Oh, okay.
Like you have the impression being on the beach, that's a thought. It's a recollection of a thought. Ramana describes it. We will go over. He says, he describes it as
residual impressions of objects
Yeah.
and the object is no longer.
he describes it residual impressions of objects in which there are no objects and no functioning. Residual impressions of objects and in which there are no objects and no functioning means the impression, the residual impression of being on the beach is there is no object. It's just a residual impression and there is no functioning either. It's just a frozen picture. Gelato.
But that picture obviously went into the memory.
Yes.
Because I'm talking about it, and it's something. And then I pull it back out of the memory when I need it.
Not necessarily. It pops by itself. Memory, it's again, that's the notion that you're doing it, when the truth is, memory is just a thought that appears. I'll give an example. Let's say you are looking for the car keys. It's like, where are the car keys? Where are the car keys? Where are the car keys? Suddenly, a thought appeared in your mind. Oh, I put it near the desk. Prior for that thought appearing, you couldn't remember. What happens after that thought appeared, the mind says, ah, I remember, it claimed it.
How did that thought come into our focus? What's the mechanism from...
No mechanism. Appeared.
It
Appeared.
Okay.
Just spontaneously by itself. For some people, it doesn't appear. So it's like, what is this name of the person? What is this name? It's like, oh, I can't remember. And then they go on their day and they forgot it and the thought never came up. Gone. No memory. The thing is, the way the mind is, it claims to be the doer, an experiencer. Yes? So what happens? A thought appears and then the mind says, I'm thinking this. I remembered. I know.
So
This is my memory.
when you do remember, it has nothing to do with the ego. It just has to do with the chit.
I don't even remember. Memory is a thought that appears. You challenge it and you would see that over and over again. When you start to look at memory as a thought that appears, you start to recognize that you're not thinking the thoughts. Thoughts are like raindrops, are like the mist coming from the ocean
So you
by
don't-
themselves.
So you don't send, like in the computer, I'm looking for something in the computer. So I'm actually sent a message, or I sent energy looking for it, and now I'm waiting for it to come back.
Yeah, possibly. It's going down the basement to the wine cellar, looking for the wine, not remember where is the wine, because the mind goes to the cheat, so it probably goes to the wine cellar and say, where is the wine? Ah, here's the wine.
That's what happens.
It's a storage. Probably somebody who programs computers will tell you in a how it works, which is a creation of the mind. So the mind probably works in a similar manner. Except we don't have to understand the mechanism of the mind. The mechanism of the mind is very primitive, mechanical. Another word that comes within, dead, stale,
It's a computer.
stinky fish. Why? Because the mind is of the past. So some Papaji used to call it, it's graveyard. So when you live in your mind, you're living dead, you live in the graveyard. When you start being yourself, that's when you're being alive.
So
It
only,
doesn't- it-
so only in silence are you alive.
No. You're always silence and thoughts appear and disappear, yet
The residual.
Yet, your attention is not on it, neither you identify with it, neither you give it any meaning, neither you give it too much attention. It's like, look, we're sitting here in a beautiful place, there's a lot of going on. You absorb everything, yet your attention is not on it. So your mind is free from it, right? And in the other hand, you might be sitting here and then the noise, you'll hear the noise and you say, oh, this noise is really disturbing. Oh, why do I can't stand this noise. And now you're giving a lot of attention to it and you start reacting to it.
Automatically then you react to that which you put attention to?
Not necessarily. Possibly. I can talk about 4 movements of the mind that the Buddha was talking about. The first movement is when the mind is free. That means impression comes into through the senses and they are registered in the storage and there is no one aware what is being registered. Like our senses right now register everything in, yet our attention is either on listening or being that which is aware. Okay? This is where the mind is free. The next movement is the mind labels. The moment it labels, basically because the thought is a label, instantaneously it generates a physical sensation. Or the thought has a sensation, even not physical, because when I label a thought in the dream, it has a sense felt experience in the mind, in the dream. So labeling is the second movement. The third one, it generates a sensation. And the fourth one, I react to that sensation. If it's pleasant, I want more of it. It's a reactivity. If it's unpleasant, I want to get rid of it. This is a reactivity. So the moment we label a thought, or sensation for that matter too, let's say I label pain, right away it generates a stronger sensation, right away automatically I react to it, I want to get rid of it. Okay? So when is the mind free? You can experience yourself as awareness, and the mind is free when you don't label anything that comes into through your senses.
You know, my feeling about that is, excuse me, is that you just sort of describe what happens in the brain itself in order for you to relocate that memory. It labels it. And if there's a sensation to it, a feeling to it, it's definitely much easier to pull it back from your memory. And then if there is a reaction of pain, pleasure, what have you, it's even easier to pull it back, or it may be more difficult depending on the sensation. If it's a painful sensation, it's going to be harder to pull it back so you can find out where it came from. So if that's true, if that's possibly how the brain works in order.
Brain, the way I see brain, and brain is an organ.
Yes, it's a machine.
We're talking about mind.
We're talking about mind.
What's the difference between brain and mind?
Mind's not an organ.
Brain is an object that can be perceived by one of the five senses. I can cut the head, pull the brain out, perceive it through the five senses. Mind is subjective, subtle, cannot be perceived by one of the five senses. Means cut the body, chop it up, you won't find the mind. You won't see it through the senses. So when we go to a brain, when we talk about the mind, it's
the mind doesn't use the brain, utilize the brain for its creation.
Yes and no. Yes, as a satellite, and no, it doesn't really need it. Because when the body dies, or there's different incidents, just a few years ago, there was a brain doctor, whatever, he got a virus, and he got brain dead, and then he was out traveling in the astral, blah blah blah, and then he came back, and for the people he back alive. He said he realized that the mind and the brain, the mind is not limited to the brain. He was traveling, so many visions, had many realizations, was all over the place, and then he came back, and whoever perceived him in the physical form, he said, "Oh, you're back." And now he took him some time, and in the physical world he expressed his journey that was on the subtle. So obviously, and that broke all his concepts, because he was very Western-like, and he said no brain, no mind, no nothing, which is okay.
He
said,
okay, one would think that it's possible for him that he was still in the brain, but the brain lost its connection with the body itself. Everything below. You know, if a person who is paralyzed
right,
from the neck down,
except
has
I
no
ask,
recollection of what's happening below him.
why to be concerned again with the body?
Oh, not.
The body goes only one direction, either grave, burnt, whatever. The body cannot return to the source. Only the mind can return to the source. So there's a lot of misconception. People say, I'm really present and being here. If you're being here, you're trapped in time, and time is always moving towards your grave. Truly being here is timeless being. So what can return to the source? That which came out of it. Who is that? The mind. This is where you have to find the origin of the mind. And that brings me to the next, in terms of what Ramana says. He says, we didn't finish. Will there be will there not be realization of the self even while the world is there taken as real? So his answer, there will not be. So as long as I believe the thoughts to be real, there will be no realization. Now, I'm not even talking about the future. Let's see that life is a single moment. It's a single event. Yeah, it's a single thought moving from one thought to another. Yes? So this is the world of each particular person. Yeah? What happens when you are actually believing the thoughts to be real? That's your world. When that belief is gone, you're world free. You experience who you are. Yeah? People think that it is in the future after a particular process. When there is no thought, here you are. When thought appears, you remain. Yet when there is a notion that you, as a separate self, believing the thought to be real, you enter dimension of dream.
So long as you don't enter the thought or associate it as I, ego, you're free. But the thought still occurs.
So as long as your identity remains as yourself, and the notion that not to associate with thoughts is misconception, and it's a trap. What does it mean? Unless one is fully liberated, means the whole notion of identity, the false identity, burnt. When you have a glimpse or realization, in that moment, the mind is purified. Yes, we heard it from Wushin. The mind is purified. That means your identity with the false separate self gets weaker. Then there would be maybe, again, the misidentification will come into the surface, and you want to recognize and withdraw the attention from it, discriminate it, shift the attention from it.
This can happen repeatedly?
This can happen
Does happen.
millions, trillions of times. This is why, as long as one has the notion they don't want to have misidentification, every time they misidentify as a separate self, they have a slight resistance. Slight resistance means they get attached to the misidentification unconsciously. So the moment you are indifferent, if there is misidentification, that's a gift and opportunity. If you identify as yourself, then you're only the self. And this fluctuation, it takes as long as it takes. The question that one can ask, who cares? If there is someone who cares, that one is the separate self that is misidentified, so it can be seen and disregarded. Can be seen and the attention can be shifted. And it can be shifted to just either another thought, or just looking into the empty space, or into the breath or bodily sensation. Just momentarily shift the attention so there's no resistance to it. This is why after even realization, the next phase is detachment from the separate self. That means one has to have the understanding and the knowing is if the misidentification comes into the surface, one has to find what's exciting about it. So if exciting is too much, what are they grateful about it? If grateful is too much, what is the gift about it? If receiving it as a gift is too much, shift the attention from it. Ignore it. And if you can't, neither. Let's say you all of the above were not working. Be still, don't move, and watch it. Watch and feel everything that going on without moving, like it's like be immovable like a mountain.
So you have to find out of what you've mentioned.
Yes.
You have to find what works for you.
Yes, this is what they're saying. You have to find your way. Because it's for the first time. You cannot find your way and think that you know the way. Is you find the way fresh every moment, every moment, every moment. The wisdom and the knowledge is already within. It will show and reveal from within once there is the understanding. Yet the approach and the attitude has to change. What makes the change for one to change their attitude and approach? I have no idea. I think it's about cooking. How much your mind is being cooked. Now, why I say cooking? Because it's about, so they use the analogy of fire. Because the presence of awareness, it's like fire. So that fire removes the darkness, right? It removes the ignorance. So knowledge removes ignorance. So it's like some minds are more not as ripe. They would be like wet wood. So to start to burn the wet wood, it takes longer. Some are dry wood. So to get them started, their mind to be on fire is a little bit quicker. Some are like dry leaf. So it's even faster. And some, they say, they're like gunpowder. They're right on fire. It just leads them instantaneously in their mind. So don't even look what it is. Just recognize that the mind has to be on fire for really to shift the attitude. It's like, how long, what does it take to shift the attitude? Be around the fire. Does it feel good always to be around the fire? No.
It's a little hot.
It's a little hot. So sometimes there was a woman who stayed around, and she used to say, when I'm around you, I'm burning. So she would escape, be away, and then she would feel, the fire within me is growing so it can lead others. And then when it was coming down, she was like, okay, I'm ready to come back. And then she's like, it's growing, and like, oh, too much. And that's what was working for her. So the knowledge is like that. True knowledge is like fire. So ignorance is like a field of thorns, dry bush. So what happens? The knowledge, which is the fire, ignites the field of thorns. Now it burns it. When it burns all of it, two things disappear. The thorns, the field of thorns, and the fire are gone. What remains is yourself. So true knowledge has to remove everything and leave you as yourself.